All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Larson, and I am the Andrew W. Mellon Fellow for Academic Engagement at the Lowe Art Museum and University of Miami Libraries. Tonight we have an exciting program for you comprised of augmented reality projects that 4 students finished or completed last spring semester in 2020 during the onset of the pandemic. So we're going to showcase their projects tonight. So the title of tonight's program is Art History and Augmented Reality, Designing Virtual Art Exhibitions in the Classroom. And their professor, Karen Mathews from Art and Art History is with us as well. So welcome to Lowe Connects. I will also say that we began Lowe Connects about 1 year ago with the onset of the pandemic to connect not only with our members, but also with the University of Miami community and with the global community. We've had people sort of chime into our Lowe Connects programs from all parts of the world and the United States. So happy to have each of you here tonight for the program. So if we can advance to the next slide. This is just a reminder, by now you probably know the Zoom features, but if not, the mute button is in the lower left-hand corner. If you want to show your video, you're welcome to. If you want to not, that's fine too. Just the second button, Stop Videos, where you control that. And then if you have questions or comments along the way, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to those questions at the end of the presentations. All right, you can go to the next slide. Survey. We do have a survey that will go to you tomorrow, and it should take less than 5 minutes. Your feedback is very important to us for the future of our programs. You might receive a survey from Localist, but please look for the one also from Lowe Art Museum. That is the survey that we would really like you to complete. So it should not take long, but it really is helpful for our future programming. Next slide, please. Our next Lowe Connects is later this month. Traditionally, we have Lowe Connects programming about once per month, but this month we have 2. So this Lowe Connects will feature Professor Heather Dyack from Art and Art History and the student curators who have been working this past semester on the Born Digital exhibition, The Distance Between You and Me Is Us. And this is an art lab at the Lowe exhibition that the students have curated this semester. There will be an exhibition catalog as well, and they will walk you through their exhibition. It's a virtual exhibition, and it'll feel like you're actually walking through the gallery. You'll learn more about their research into this topic into the topic of photography and photographs from the permanent collection of the Lowe Art Museum that they have selected to feature. Next slide, please. So today just so happens to be augmented reality at the University of Miami. This event has already passed, but it was this morning. It was an augmented reality experience tutorial or workshop that people have attended, and we invited them to come tonight to see the projects that the students have created. So that was this morning between 9 and noon, but it's very exciting to see the various avenues that augmented reality is being used at the University of Miami. All right, next slide. And now we're getting to tonight's program. So as mentioned, it's Art History and Augmented Reality, Designing Virtual Art Exhibitions in the Classroom. And Dr. Karen Mathews will start us off, and then later on I'll introduce Nhadya Lawes, Olivia Orris, Alexis Paul, and Stefanie Suarez. And very happy to have the 5 of them presenting tonight. And so I think we should get started. So if you go to the next slide, please. So our first presenter is going to be Dr. Karen Rose Mathews, who is an associate professor in the Department of Art and Art History at the University of Miami. She's a specialist in the visual culture of the medieval and early modern Mediterranean, with an emphasis on intercultural relations and artistic exchange across the sea. Her research and teaching interests also include the use of XR, or extended reality, technologies in the study and presentation of historic art and architecture. She has published several articles in this field of research and has also created an augmented reality application that explores the art and architecture of colonial Latin America. So I would love to hand the mic over, the virtual mic over, to my friend and colleague, Dr. Karen Mathews.
Thank you very much, Christina, for that introduction. And thank you to everyone who has joined us here virtually this evening. The next slide, please. The class project presented here is an offshoot of the Animating Antiquity project, supported by the Mellon Foundation through a CREATE grant. The aim of the project was to animate ancient art objects by bringing them into the viewer's space and staging interactions between people and objects. Students in this project that we worked on a couple years prior created their own 3D printed models of ancient artworks at the Lowe, and then devised interactive experiences that connected the ancient artwork, its 3D replica, and the viewer in the museum space. This project served as the impetus for a long-term installation of 3D models in the Antiquities Gallery that people could touch and manipulate while also consulting a touchscreen to learn more about objects themselves and to learn about the process of creating 3D models from original artworks. This was to have been the springboard for the students' projects in the Da Vinci capstone that we're talking about this evening. But COVID changed everything. Obviously, touching things became quite problematic. And then the museum itself closed. And so we moved on to Plan B. But I'll show you the installation in just a second so you can see what our starting point might have been and might still be. We will see in the future. Next slide, please. On a more positive note, the pandemic has inspired a great deal of creativity on the part of cultural institutions in terms of exploring the potential of XR, that is extended reality, technologies, to facilitate remote access to collections. XR encompasses augmented, mixed, and virtual reality, the first two of which combine real and virtual content, while virtual reality is completely immersive and removed from the world of the user. So the background of this slide shows a graduate student from the School of Communication, Lorena Lopez, who, as a related project to the Animating Antiquity project, created a virtual reality application that explored the idea of incorporating touch into a virtual reality experience. So with the controllers, you could physically pick up a replica of an ancient vase, much in the same way that a person in a domestic space in antiquity would have used that same object. But above and beyond this idea of compensation for all that we have lost over this past year is the far greater potential of augmented reality, in particular, to enhance experiences in the museum itself and provide viewers with a personal, meaningful, interactive experience of art. This was the premise and the promise we wish to explore in the Da Vinci Scholars Capstone course held in the spring of 2020, that you will hear more about, obviously, from the students themselves, not from me. Next slide, please. So on the screen here, you can see the in-gallery installation that was to have been the starting point of the augmented reality apps the students were working on. So each one of these objects would have been the focus as you put on the goggles, and then that would have introduced you into the app experience. However, the students still used an art object from the Lowe, that is an image of the art object from the Lowe, as the basis for their virtual exhibition. So each student selected an ancient art object in the Lowe that was the starting point of their exhibition to be experienced through Magic Leap headsets. The video clips you will see later are recordings of what the user would see in the actual experience. So this is as close as we could get to showing you what you would see if you put on the headsets yourself. The students conducted art historical research, devised storyboards for the experience they wished to create, and built the application using the Unity game engine. As I note on the slide, this course innovated in its empowerment of art history students as makers and technologists, its inclusion of an interdisciplinary team of experts, and its content that was knowledge-based, but also oriented towards the completion of a final project, simulating a real-life work environment. So the next and last slide, please. And as always, it takes a village to create a project of this scope. And I would like to end my part of the presentation by thanking all of the people who contributed to the project and thanking them for their creativity as well in thinking up the idea and also helping us implement it. And without further ado, I will turn the program over to the students themselves, who were truly the creative force behind this project. Thank you.
All right, we can go to the next slide, please. I'd like to introduce the first of the 4 students who will be presenting tonight. Nhadya Lawes is a junior, class of 2022, from Pembroke Pines, Florida, majoring in English literature with a minor in sociology, as well as a cognate in museum studies. A true interdisciplinary, her passions and studies intersect across Black studies and literary and visual cultures. Nhadya's campus involvements include student assistant in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, Foot Fellow and Da Vinci Scholar in the College of Arts and Sciences, and serving on the executive boards for the Hammond Butler Gospel Choir and University of Miami sections of the National Council of Negro Women and the NAACP. Nhadya's career plans include graduate school, international work and travel, and working in a curatorial or administrative position at a major museum or arts organization. So I'd like to welcome Nhadya. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Larson, and hi, everyone. So I'm really excited to share this project. It was quite a task dealing with the technology and everything last semester, but I was able to really make something that I'm proud of. And so you can go to the next slide, please. And so for this project, some of the tech was mentioned before. So we use Unity to design our experiences magically for the goggle sets that we're able to like see the exhibitions through. And then Sketchfab was like our free store for all of the assets that we use. So I use Sketchfab to, you'll see in a moment, I kind of wanted to recreate a museum experience. So from the lights at the top to the floor of the space, I use Sketchfab for all of those assets. And then the art object that I chose out of the 4 that we were given is the Roman matron. And this kind of just like this piece is the trigger for everything about my exhibition and kind of guided how I thought about the process. And so what we learned in Dr. Mathews' discussions is that this figure, the Roman matron, which was usually found at a tomb site, was supposed to portray the ideal way that a woman would want to be seen at death, which for me raises questions about like who has the authority over depicting this portrait. It usually wasn't a woman who was creating these pieces. So asking questions like, are these attempts at memorializing these women? Do they refer to a single unique individual woman or the representation of a larger ideal of womanhood? And what factors into the agency of whether this representation has that identity of being individual or collective? And so thinking through such questions and themes, my initial idea included various media, including sculpture, photography, painting, and collage. And a part of our process in class was like also taking in like design thinking and all of those elements of like creating an interactive experience. And so we kind of had to narrow down our projects. I'm a very like imaginative person, so we had to narrow down our projects to make sure that they were feasible enough to make sure that we can complete it in the scope of the semester. And as I began to cut the pieces, there emerged this thread of sculpture for all of my objects. And so what I was thinking through was how to relate the Roman matron as an object to myself personally as a student approaching ancient Roman work. And that's part of where the title comes from. So I was able to expand the Roman matron themes to that of Black womanhood. And it ultimately became a project around identity and media through sculpture. And so this augmented reality exhibition looks at individuality and the collective in the context of female portraiture across eras to explore questions of agency, beauty, authority, womanhood, and representational burden, among others, all centered around the Roman matronhead that's in the Lowe's permanent collection. And it really became the result of the project became a journey of agency for the artist and for this work. So I have a connector piece of a Roman relief that I got from Sketchfab. And then I have a piece by Charles Calverley that you'll see kind of towards the right of your screen, which was created by Charles Calverley, was a white man who was a sculptor. And this is one of the few pieces that he had of any Black subject. And this is a young girl named Little Ida. And then being able to transition into Black female artists themselves. So we have a piece called Madam C.J. Walker by Sonia Clark, which is magnificent, and I'll get to it in a moment. And then Kara Walker's A Subtlety or The Marvelous Sugar Baby. And so those are the objects that I ended up with for my exhibition. And Sonia Clark's piece I love because it was like a very unconventional way of approaching sculpture. And I love the technique. I saw the piece a few years back in Austin and fell in love. It's made out of, I think, over like 4,000 actual combs. And so it's just a really nod and like homage to who Madam C.J. Walker was historically and like her legacy today. And then the Kara Walker piece is fabulous. And it was something that I had seen a little while back and never thought about again. And then I went to my contemporary art professor at the time, Dr. Dyack, about my project, and she brought it up and I was like, oh, this is what I need. Like, this is what I need to wrap up the show. And so it's also nice to have the virtual aspects of being able to see the Kara Walker piece because it was kind of like a temporal piece in a project that she did with Creative Time. So there's like no way to go back to it. So it's nice to have it in this virtual aspect. And then also the ability to kind of zoom into the combs with the Clark piece that I was able to do in my project. And so you can go to the next slide. And so these are just like screenshots of what the project ended up looking like. So I have like a menu, a credits page, because I did not do this all on my own. There was a lot of just like teamwork and support in creating this project. And then you'll see what I mentioned before about me like trying to recreate this museum space, trying to mix it up a little bit. So there are a couple like black walls and like a centered gallery space for the Kara Walker piece. And then I have some videos for you to see. So you can go to the next slide.
These questions, identity and agency come to mind. So little historical female portraiture was actually created by females, raising the question of women being represented predominantly by others. These questions,
Oh, you can go to the next video, I'm sorry.
Enter Sonia Clark's Madam C.J. Walker on the right. The figure depicted here is of Madam C.J. Walker, America's first self-made female millionaire, a Black woman. Walker built an empire, particularly in the realm of hair products, employing thousands of other Black women and leaving a legacy in America and beyond. In this piece, Clark used almost 4,000 combs to create the image of Madam C.J. Walker. See a zoomed-in detail of the work on the left. The use of these combs in her portrait is an homage to the collective legacy and power she created with her beauty line. This individual woman came to represent collective Black womanhood hair, and economic power. Other connections to the Roman matron that could be noted are the importance of hair and hairstyles to establish both collective and individual identity. Here, female portraiture addresses collective stereotypes of Black womanhood, to highlight how essential the labor of individual Black women was and still is to the American economy, and places them on a pedestal, if you will, in place of honor and prestige. Kara
You can go
Walker's
to the
sculpture
last
depicts the
video.
slave
I
stereotypes.
think this is a repetition. Okay.
From the Roman matron to the marvelous sugar baby, today we've looked at several types of female portraiture. The individual and collective representations of Black women in this exhibit can help understand the characteristics and importance of female sculpture in the Roman period. Issues of agency, memory, and identity connect these sculptures over time, and I hope that this exhibit has helped you expand your way of approaching female portraiture in general. This has been Woman Like Me.
Yes, so those are some clips from this show. You can go to the next slide. And it's so funny, like hearing my voice on that is like so weird, but I think the user experience was definitely enhanced by the audio aspect of being able to give context and personality to the show. I even like got like random lo-fi music on YouTube to like play in the background so you weren't just like looking at the pieces. So I really wanted to create an experience out of the entire project. And just like a few implications, I think, of like what this meant to me and I think what it could be moving forward is that with more time and research, after I came to this like specific theme of Black women artists and sculptures, there's so much potential. And I see gaps. Like I love this, but I'm also like, ooh, I could have done all of these different things. So I could have done a show that was like completely inspired by the Roman matron to do like a show of straight just busts. So there's artists like Elizabeth Catlett and Selma Burke. I always have to shout out, so I'm a part of NCNW on campus, and this picture on the left, the second picture, is a bust of Mary McLeod Bethune, who's our founder, and this is a piece by Selma Burke. And so I could have done a gallery section that was completely devoted to busts, and then do another one to kind of tie in contemporary pieces like the ones by Sonia Clark and Kara Walker. And then if I were to expand this show, I would definitely add the work of Simone Vetley, who's going to represent us at the Venice Biennale next year. And her work, I love. This is an image by her called Jug from 2019. So these are just a few other pieces, like Glory by Elizabeth Catlett and then Gwendolyn Knight by Augusta Savage that maybe could have had their way in my exhibition. So this was just a really exciting experience. I think being able to create an augmented reality art exhibition just opens my eyes to all of the ways that art and technology kind of can be interdisciplinary and cross over. And it just like, it makes the imagination keep running. So it's a really great experience. And I'm really grateful for being able to take this class. And so that is my presentation. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Nhadya, for your presentation. An excellent project too. So very, very interesting. Thank you. If we can go to the next slide, please. So our next student presenter is Olivia Orris, who is from Chester Springs, Pennsylvania. She graduated from the University of Miami in the spring of 2020 with a Bachelor of Science in Biology and minors in Chemistry and Psychology. She's currently a first-year medical student at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. So please join me in welcoming Olivia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming. So as you can see, my sculpture was of the Greek gods, Theseus on the left and Ariadne on the right. And the concept of my project was to explain their story and define what described a hero in Greek mythology. So our goal was to use technology to help explain the details of pieces of art. So the idea was, as you enter a museum, you put on these augmented reality goggles, as Professor Mathews explained, and you'll be able to see the artwork appear in a three-dimensional space with explanations and further pictures and visuals to help it understand the main idea of the art. You can move on to slide 2, please. So when we first started the class, we learned about the history of Roman and Greek culture. And afterwards, as Professor Mathews explained, we were presented with 4 sculptures that were on display at the Lowe, and we were allowed to choose which one we liked. I chose Theseus and Ariadne and decided to share their story. After I did some further research on their story, we came to class prepared with a storyboard, which was pretty much a PowerPoint about the vision we had in mind for the layout of the application. And then we had a set agenda about what we wanted to accomplish a few weeks at a time. So once we had a set plan, we downloaded the software Magic Leap, as explained, and which was our main augmented reality application. And we created our software. We created our app on the software called Unity, as you can see in the pictures. So this was, as you can see, you can click where it says click here to view our story. This was all the application process and kind of what it looked like on our end. You go to the next slide. So when I present my application, this is sort of what the layout looked like. The idea was to have the user walk up and you would see the double-headed sculpture in the center, and you can walk to either side of the sculpture to either view Theseus, as you can see on the left, and Ariadne on the right. And there would be another picture accompanying by them. So it's a sculpture of Ariadne on the right, and then a picture of Theseus with the Minotaur on the left. And there would be a description describing who Theseus is and who Ariadne is underneath. And as you continue to learn about their story, you will see figures at the bottom and more sculptures appear. So we have the Minotaur, Theseus defeating the Minotaur, Theseus saving Ariadne, and then lastly, Ariadne by herself when Theseus left her. And again, a passage, as you will see in my application, would accompany the artwork and aid in telling the story. So overall, the layout of my project was to have the floating head at the top, and you would move around to see each god, and afterwards the different sculptures and pictures would appear explaining their story. And we can view my application now on the next page.
Sorry, everyone. I don't think it's there. I'm going to stop share it and see if we can get it another way.
The funerary vase. The funerary.
Jody, I could share my screen. I have access to her video.
Okay, great.
The funerary
My
vase.
video. You don't want to play that one, Christina.
Oh, okay. The second. Just a second.
It's under Theseus and Ariadne if you can't find it.
Okay.
In the story of Theseus and
Okay, I have it. Just a second. Does that look right?
Ariadne. He abducts Ariadne and abandons her. Now, walk around to view Ariadne. Ariadne is a Cretan princess and the daughter of King Minos of Crete. The name Ariadne means utterly pure, and she was known as the mistress of Labyrinth. In the double-headed sculpture, Ariadne is shown wearing a crown over her wavy, pulled-back hair. Now, move to the center of the sculpture to view their story. Ariadne's father, King Minos, attacked Athens after his son Androio was killed there. Because of this, Athens needed to sacrifice 7 men and women to the Minotaur every 7 to 9 years, and 1 year the sacrificial victims included Theseus. The Minotaur is a half man and half beast who lived in the labyrinth. As Theseus was selected as one of the young Athenians to be sacrificed, he volunteered to kill the Minotaur. Theseus then killed the Minotaur and King Minos to save the people of Athens. Heroes serve as the link between gods and humans, so when average humans cannot get justice, heroes do it for them. Theseus thus was an avenger, but his success would not have been possible without the help of the heroine, Ariadne. Ariadne fell in love at first sight with Theseus. She helped him escape out of the labyrinth of the Minotaur by giving him a sword to fight and a ball of thread to retrace his way out of the labyrinth. Ariadne betrayed her father, King Minos, and their land for Theseus in order to stop the brutal sacrifices of young people. Theseus and Ariadne eloped afterward. In the
All right, thanks, Olivia. I'll turn things back to you again.
Awesome. Yeah, so just some final thoughts. As a Da Vinci scholar, and this was my last semester at the University of Miami with this class, I knew I would be taking classes that would bridge the connection between art, science, and history. However, this was probably the most interesting class and one of the most challenging classes I've ever taken. It definitely was out of my comfort zone because I'm a science major and I haven't done anything like this or created a program like this ever before. And I find it really fascinating because now as a medical student, augmented reality has been used during the pandemic. I know several medical schools are using this software for anatomy and to visualize anatomy labs and dissections if schools are able to access it. So I'm definitely very excited to see what the future holds for augmented reality in medicine. So thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Olivia. Wonderful presentation and loved your selections too that you featured. Next up is Alexis Paul. She graduated in spring of 2020 and her major was religion and healthcare with minors in chemistry and art. She was a pre-medical student at University of Miami and she's continuing her studies in hopes of becoming a physician. So Alexis, I'll give you the mic.
Yeah, hi guys, hi. So first of all, I want to thank those who put this presentation together. I think this is really amazing to kind of bring the Lowe Art Museum to everyone virtually and put it in a public or general public, and for us students to share what we did for a whole semester, because as Olivia said, it was definitely challenging at times. So I'm really grateful that you guys are able to see what we have come up with. So I'll get started on my experience and how my application kind of came about, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so you can see here just some snippets of research that actually went into this project before we could fully dive into building the experience. I don't think that reading was so much a hard problem for all of us as it was, computer science. None of us have a background in computer science. So it was very interesting to learn Unity and the different interfaces, especially code. And it was definitely out of all of our realm, but we made it. Anyways, as mentioned before, I did get a bachelor's in religion and healthcare. I took a course my sophomore year. It was called Ancient Medicine. And I was extremely fascinated by the history that tied both my passions of arts and humanities and then medicine together. So throughout my research, I recognized that the woman on this funerary vase actually not only represented death, but there might have been some sort of event where both the women were present. I say both because if you look on the screen there, it's a woman's head, but then also there is something on top of it, and it does happen to be a woman, or at least so we all think. So I was immediately brought to this biological process of childbirth, and more often than not, surprisingly, this process led in the woman dying way back then. But before I jump ahead of the whole process that I'm going to take you through in my application, I'm going to, in the next slide, show you a short clip that came from my game, so you say, and then I'll come back and give you a brief summary on everything.
The funerary vase, also known as an Apulian polychrome head vase, was created around the end of the 4th century BC by a workshop in Canessa, Italy. This vase is comprised of 2 figures. The bottom structure consists of a woman's head, and the top features a representation of an entire female figure. Ancient Greek art, in general, had a strong focus on death, but vases like this one had a specific funerary purpose. These vessels were grave goods, produced to pay homage to deceased loved ones. Women, in particular, were responsible for visiting the tombs and caring for deceased family members.
Okay, I hope you guys are really good at reading while things are moving, because I couldn't really hear it that well, but I think you'll get the general idea once I continue talking. So in the game after this, you can actually go to the next slide. Yeah, so after this, viewers are then brought to what is in the upper left-hand corner, and it's 2 marble reliefs that are depicting childbirth. I think I got these from some online, I think it was like the Met or something, where these reliefs are actually depicted. And it was really cool. You could click on them and they would be able to describe the event that was taking place, or I would describe the event. And then you'd click on a button, and then in Greek mythology, your body was actually brought into this underworld sort of spirituality, I guess, as Greek mythologists would say. And so in the middle and then in the upper right-hand corner, you can kind of see snippets of that. I didn't include that in a film. I actually just will later show you the funerary procession in which you can see the vase actually being put into an actual graveyard scene, so to say. So I kind of want to briefly touch, or at least show you guys, the interface that we used, as you can see on the bottom left and bottom right. This was actually screenshots of my screen at one point, kind of moving around different aspects. I think what was so hard for us is that we're so used to, I mean, 3-dimensionality in daily life, but then when you put it on a 2-dimensional screen and you grab these assets from online and then you're trying to move them and position them in so many different ways, I think all of the students gained a greater appreciation for 3-dimensionality, because it was definitely an overwhelming experience when you go, because the interface only shows up as a black atmosphere. So you only have this huge atmosphere and you're bringing in different assets and you're trying to place different things. And it was very, very interesting. But anyways, I think overall, just this experience was really, really fascinating. I think Olivia touched on it a little bit, but this is probably one of like the greatest, most out of my comfort courses that I had ever taken at UM. I also believe, and I appreciated this project so much because, as I said, I tied in both both medicine and the humanities in a way, because I do talk about childbirth and I do talk about death, and that happens to be pretty rampant in the medical field. But I definitely think there's a lot of implications today, especially with COVID and online learning. Medical students have to take labs, for instance. There's definitely virtual settings with that. And just technology in general, COVID has really brought attention to that aspect very quickly. So yeah, I think the next slide will show you the funerary procession in which this vase would actually be used by a woman to bring grave goods to loved ones or whomever.
Okay, so I'm going to share your video from the original file so that the sound is a little bit better. So just a second.
You have now reached the end of death. Women, as mentioned at the beginning of this experience, played an important role of paying homage to the deceased family members and loved ones. The woman shown here has grave goods in her hand. Examples of grave goods are located around her. I'm going to explain these grave goods and funerary sculptures in brief detail. In front of the lady is a funerary relief and a funerary vase. This is the same vase depicted in the museum at the moment. There are 3 events that take place during death: prosthesis, ekphora, and the visit to the graveyard. Prosthesis is the act of laying out the body and giving gestures towards the body, such as the touching of the head for exaggerated mourning. Ekphora is the procession to the graveyard. This procession is depicted in the big round vase to the right of the woman, closest to the boulder. The visit to the graveyard was a time in which women would pay homage to the deceased. This is also a time to reassure that the body made it out of the underworld to the afterlife.
All right, wonderful, Alexis. It's terrific how you connected humanities with medicine. I think it's a great connection, and I'm glad that it relates to your current interests as well. So any last thoughts before we move on?
Oh no, I'm good. I didn't know if you were talking to me or not.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
That's fine.
No, it was good. I just wanted to thank everyone, like, for one, my friends, I guess I would consider you guys my friends now. My friends that took this course with me, and then definitely the computer science geniuses behind all of this. I definitely thank them. And then Karen Mathews was incredible throughout this entire process. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you, Alexis. Our last presenter tonight is Stefanie Suarez. She graduated in spring of 2020 with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in anthropology with minors in gender and sexuality studies, psychology, and Latin American studies. And after graduating in May, she started culinary school, which I'm really jealous of. I think that's wonderful thing to pursue. She has a dream of opening a 100% environmentally sustainable restaurant. So Stefanie, I'll let you have the mic.
Okay, well, first off, thank you all so much for being here today and for giving us this space to, reflect on this project that I know for me and my classmates is so exciting and challenging, but in a really rewarding way. And so to begin, the object that I chose for my application was an unidentified bearded Roman male, which you can see up there on the screen. And really the foundation of this process was, the few weeks that we took in the beginning of class to really understand Roman sculpture and Roman portraiture. And Dr. Mathews did an excellent job of really teaching us how to contextualize these objects, because we're looking at them now in the 21st century, but she really opened us up to what they revealed about like Roman values, about Roman society, about virtues. And so something that I learned in that like period of research is that there are really two main reasons why someone would have a portrait commissioned, and that is either to celebrate a great achievement or to memorialize them after their death. And so the fact that there was a real person behind this image who had this sculpture created, but now they've sort of drifted on into oblivion, it's unidentified, we don't know who this was. There's something sort of tragic about that to me. And so really in this app, I wanted to kind of recontextualize and give this object a new life and give us another way to like relate to this. So if you could proceed to the next slide, please. So the most important part of the application is really the assets. These were our like building blocks. These were the images that we wanted to like highlight and show to our users as they go out through the experience. And so there were a few different places where we looked for these assets. We looked on Sketchfab, through the Unity store, which was our editing software, Smithsonian, and TurboSquid. And what I learned throughout this process that's really cool is there's a lot of big museums that are taking the time to turn their artwork into these digital assets. And so there's like all of these 3D replicas of amazing sculptures at our fingertips, and so many people don't even know about it, but we really got to like dive into that with this project. And so after we acquired the assets, we started building out our kind of our thesis, what we wanted to tell, what we wanted to show through this process. And that was done through a process of like storyboarding. So if you could proceed to the next slide, please. I have some screenshots of my storyboard, snapshots of the process. So as you can see, we thought all the way down to like what the color palettes were that we wanted, what did we want to show, what mood did we want to set visually, the audio, and every single scene was laid out beforehand before we even got into the process of editing and putting it all together. So working in Unity was a very big challenge, as Alexis kind of touched on. You're trying to translate something from a two-dimensional space into a three-dimensional space. And so it's a lot of like tinkering and tweaking, going back and forth between the software and the goggles and the software and the goggles, trying to get everything right. And so before I get a little bit deeper into the implications of my app, I want to go ahead and show you all a clip. So if you could please go to the next slide and show the clip. Thank you.
Among the ruins, this Roman male portrait is silently lost in time. Fragmented and without an inscription, the person the sculpture represents has suffered the greatest injustice that could befall any ancient Roman. Without any strong identifying features, he's been forgotten. So who was this bearded Roman figure? Continue on, and you may just uncover his identity. But be aware that the answer is far from set in stone. Due to the imprecise nature of portraiture sculpture, this portrait would certainly have been accompanied by an inscription such as this. But what kind of information would the inscribed stone tablet provide? Each inscription would be addressed to the spirits of the dead, followed by the person's name. During this time, Romans could live well into their 50s. Old age could allude to wisdom, while young age places the person in their prime. Occupation was integral to a person's role in society. This gives us special information about daily life and social class. A person would strive to commemorate family lineage and honor ancestors, as family was central to how memory was created and maintained. Immortalizing qualities such as wisdom, power, strength, and intelligence were especially important in creating a vibrant legacy. There were a wide variety of reasons why a Roman portrait would be commissioned, the most popular being to honor the deceased, to celebrate a great social achievement, or to simply avoid falling into oblivion.
Okay, so that is it for the clip. And I know we're running a little short on time, so I'll try and hurry this last bit along. But basically through this app, I wanted to connect the user to the artwork in a more intimate way. I think a lot of times, again, we see sculptures and we don't understand that there was really a person behind that, or we don't consider that there was someone behind that. And in this case, somebody who desperately wanted to not be forgotten. And so really through using this application, I wanted people to sort of think about how important legacy and memory are. You know, today we have cameras and you can capture every single moment and put it on the internet and it's there forever. But the ancient Romans didn't have this luxury. And so sort of through creating this app, we've given this bearded Roman male new life. And so some of the benefits that I see of this type of technology is that it sort of democratizes access to these artworks. And although seeing art on a virtual reality headset like doesn't necessarily replace the real thing, it's able to give people access who never would have access. And it also really helps us to contextualize these pieces and like have a greater understanding. And so that's it for me. Thank you all so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stefanie, for your presentation and for your really amazing project as well. If we can go to the next slide. So yes, now it's time for Q&A. So I have been monitoring this chat just to see what questions came up, you know, by the different people who are in the audience. So one question that came up by a few times was, did you all have a previous background in augmented reality? And also, do you feel that you mastered Unity through the process of this project? And this goes to all the students. So did you master Unity, and also what did you learn by using Unity as your platform?
I think it would take years to master Unity, honestly. I thought it was really difficult, but we had a lot of support, and I would say, like, I feel like I have like a basic understanding of Unity, and this project really taught me how to think in three-dimensional space. That's it.
All right, thanks, Stefanie. Anybody else? Any of the other presenters want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think we definitely just brushed the surface of Unity. I mean, I think, like I said before, I think we got a better understanding of augmented reality in a way, but I think developing other games, I don't know if we would go even more in depth about how we did it, because like I said, we had the comp sci people really come in and just aid us along. And I mean, we had the vision, but they really just like laid it out for us. So I think we definitely just skimmed the surface of Unity as an application.
Yeah, we definitely have to shout out like Nick, our TA. Like he helped us. Like we would have Zoom calls and like ask Nick a bunch of questions about Unity, and he was always like super helpful. So we can't like leave him out. He was a big help for, I think, all of our projects.
Very good. And Olivia, how about you?
I think everyone hit the nail on the head. If it wasn't for Nick and everyone, it honestly would not have been a success. We would spend hours on Zoom trying to figure things out, and Nick would always help me. And it's honestly one of those things where if you miscode one thing, it could ruin the entire project. So Unity is something very, very fascinating and very cool and challenging to use. So I'm very grateful we got to use it and figure it out.
Very good. And Professor Mathews, can you comment just a little bit why you chose Unity as a platform?
Well, it is the platform, I guess you can say, and it is a platform that is equally effective for doing augmented reality and virtual reality projects. So it was kind of the default mode. It is obviously complex, but with some assistance, as everyone saw, even people without any background in this could create a complete augmented reality application and do so in a fairly limited period of time under really difficult circumstances. So brava to all of the students and the hard work that they put in, and to Nick Alberti, who was there every step of the way with y'all.
All right, very good. And so we're getting into a little bit of technical questions. So if somebody could briefly indicate or describe what Turbo Squid, Sketchfab, and Unity are. And I know this is a somewhat of a complex question, but if your elevator speech, if you don't.
Anyone want to touch on, everyone want to do that?
I could do it, okay.
I only know one of it. I only knew Sketchfab. I don't know what anything else you just said was.
Essentially platforms to look up assets. So it's sort of almost like a Google search where you go on there and you could type in Roman inscription or dog or really whatever you wanted, and it'll provide 3D assets that fit whatever your search is. So it's,
and which platform was that, Stefanie?
That's the Turbo Squid, the Unity.
Okay.
Was that the one listed that we were going
Sketchfab.
Sketchfab, yeah.
Yeah, they're all three-dimensional objects that are already encrypted, and then you just download them onto your computer, which takes a lot of time and patience to do, and a lot of storage. Make sure you have a lot of storage if you ever want to build a game on your computer. But yeah, they're all just like different objects that you just put into the Unity application.
Very good. And one of our audience members was very observant, noticed that we had kind of a blank canvas behind each of your projects, so we used sort of like white walls, kind of museum-like walls. And so this person was asking, why didn't we have it in a different environment, with augmented reality, responding to a certain other environment. So do you all want to, things were re-recorded. I saw the first recording, the audience tonight saw the second recording. So do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I can talk in terms of, so I think the white walls that we had for the second recordings, because we did have previous recordings like in someone's home, but we just thought like for presentation purposes, might as well have the clean slate so you can really be able to focus on the exhibitions. But I think in terms of my project, like having those like museum walls and recreating like a physical museum space was something I wanted to do because I'm like a museums girl. Like I want to work in museums post-grad. And so that's just like where my headspace was initially. But I think it is also cool having this virtual augmented reality aspect of somebody not having to physically go to a museum space to have that same experience. So that's kind of why I wanted to make sure I included it as a part of my application.
Right. So as I had indicated previously, we had really hoped to have the Lowe as the display location for these apps. And obviously that was no longer possible given circumstances in the spring of 2020. So the wonderful thing about augmented reality is that you can be more virtual, and then you can be augmenting a particular space. So you can have a remote presence, and then you can actually be using augmented reality to enhance an experience in a specific location. So we had to go remote because of circumstances, but there's extraordinary potential that could still be explored by having those apps being displayed in the Lowe itself with the objects there.
Very good. Thanks, Dr. Mathews. I have not a question, but a compliment. A professor from, I think, BC, I think that would be Boston College, teaches, is in the biology department, and said that tonight's presentation might perhaps help him to tinker with his own course on medical humanities and so forth. So kudos there. Just scrolling the chat to see if it, let's see. Yeah, basically the rest of the chat is, people basically complimenting you all on the presentation tonight and on your projects, and just this is important work that you've done. So I think with that, we are a little after time, but that's okay. Thanks to the audience for hanging out with us a little bit longer past 6:30. And thanks to each of the presenters, to Professor Mathews, and also to my colleagues at the Lowe Art Museum who helped not only prepare for tonight's presentation, but also to help with, oddly enough, technical difficulties that we were having. So thanks to everyone for tonight's presentation, and have a great evening.